Good morning. Before we start, I know that all veterans out there can relate to what I'm going to say. I remember 55 years ago, I took an oath, and it started off with I, say your name, and ended in God we trust. I just hope that everybody knows that we do not forget our veterans, and we're here to honor them on this solemn day and appreciate, even with the foul weather, all the folks that's come out. If you would, please stand, those who can, and join me in invocation. Father God, we come to you in prayer on this solemn day to honor our veterans, both past and present. We pray your guidance and shield of protection on our military forces around the world. Lord, we pray you place your hand of healing upon those carrying horrible wounds and those who carry the unseen wounds. Let us not forget the sacrifices that all who dedicated their service to duty, honor, country, and defending our way of life. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Jack. The national anthem will now be led by Trish Cheney. Trish is a graduate of Virginia Tech, and she moved here from California later after performing on the West Coast. She has been involved in the children's reading program at the library, and currently is singing with her group Kitchen Sink here in Abingdon, and it has been a great opportunity for us in the past for her to lead us in song. So today she has graced us with her return. Trish?
Good morning, everyone. Please join me in the national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight on the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, give proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave on the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Trish will return later in the program. Our Pledge of Allegiance will now be led by Mr. Scott Sexton. Scott has had 40 years in law enforcement and was a Brown River Navy guy in Vietnam in 67 and 68, and returned for a second helping in 1970. He will lead us now in the Pledge of Allegiance. Scott, you have it. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Good morning, Abingdon. I think it's a little darker than we expected to have at noon, but better than pouring rain. I'm your Master of Ceremonies, and my name is Colonel John Bradley, USAF retired. I'm a Vietnam veteran and your Master of Ceremonies for today. I'd like to welcome all veterans and their families and friends to the 19th Annual Veterans Day ceremony held here at Memorial Park of Abingdon in Washington County, Virginia, celebrating all who have served in the United States Armed Forces. According to the Veterans Day National Committee, the theme for today is the word honor. But what is honor? According to the dictionary, honor means a good name or public esteem. To show honor means to treat someone with admiration and or respect. But honor also reflects the military value and tradition of answering the call to duty. There is a distinct honor in serving to protect the Constitution and our way of life. Never let it be said that people who have accepted this call are anything but other than patriots and heroes, but never suckers or losers. These veterans among us are the cream of humanity and worthy of our highest honor. It is now my distinct honor to introduce Dr. John Drasner, a good friend of Captain Jerry Neal, who is our guest speaker. Dr. Drasner is a Virginia native and a fellow Air Force veteran. He began his health career as a flight surgeon in the United States Air Force, practicing and directing primary care, outpatient services, public health, and aeromedical programs while stationed at Langley Air Force Base, Virginia. His roles included Chief of Flight Medicine for the 1st Fighter Wing and Chief of Aeromedical Assessments for Air Combat Command. He had service in Desert Storm with the 94th Fighter Squadron, a very famous fighter squadron I may add. The fighter squadron for Captain Eddie Rickenbacker during First World War. He has logged over 350 hours in military aircraft, primarily in his assigned F-15D Eagle fighter jet. He was honorably discharged as a major in 1997, and since 1997 has continued to contribute to the field of medicines in ways that few of us can understand or even imagine. In recent years, he served as Commissioner of Health for the state of Tennessee, but more importantly, as Director of the Centers for Preparedness and Response with the CDC. Yes, I said the CDC. He was the man on the front lines during our COVID-19 response. It's now my distinct pleasure to introduce Dr. John Drasner.
That was perhaps a longer introduction than I anticipated, but thank you very much. Greetings and thank you, Colonel Bradley, Chair Yuri, fellow veterans, honored guests, and all of you who support veterans. We were hoping to have some students here today. I think we do have some, but not the cadre we were hoping to have. But we are really grateful and delighted you all are here It's really an amazing thing to have all of you gathered, particularly on an unfriendly weather day such as this. I'm honored today by virtue of a friendship I'm blessed to have with him and his family to briefly introduce our very special speaker and honoree. Were I to do a proper introduction, one that would adequately speak to the life and times of this special soul, his contributions and sacrifices, we would run out of daylight. As you know, the remaining members of the World War II group, often called the Greatest Generation, are few. Of the 16 million Americans who served in World War II, the Department of Veterans Affairs estimates there are fewer than 67,000 still with us today. Of those like him, the 150,000 combat veterans of D-Day, estimates are fewer than 3,000. Our honored speaker is one of those remarkable souls, giants who still walk among us. His name is Jerome B. Jerry Neal. Born in Kansas City, Missouri on April 7th, 1921, he is 101 years old. His story is astounding, as is the grace, the gratitude tinged with sadness, and the deep humility and humanity he conveys for those of us that are fortunate to hear him tell some of his stories. I have personally cherished the opportunity to get to know him and learn from his ability to recount in amazing detail the extraordinary history he has lived, a history that has led to each of us being here today. Obviously, I cannot come close to doing his story justice, but for the sake of introduction, allow me to give just a bit of context. D-Day, June 6, 1944, called Operation Overlord, involved approximately 150,000 troops, 5,000 ships, and 11,000 aircraft. Those numbers are approximate. But it was the largest ever land, air, and sea operation before or since. Captain Neal was the pilot on one of those aircraft, a B-24 bomber. It was his third combat mission. The story of that mission is both miraculous and tragic. That story must be his to tell. Yet both before and after that fateful day, his last piloting a B-24, there are many more stories. Captain Neal went on to fly 32 more incredibly difficult and dangerous combat missions, and these 32 were in B-17 aircraft. His completion of these missions are a testament to his exceptional skills as a pilot, his courage, his qualities as an aircraft commander and a leader. His recounting of these missions, a testament to his faith and to his compassion for those who were lost. Among other medals, Captain Neal earned the Distinguished Flying Cross. That is a very substantial medal, one below essentially the Medal of Honor. He is likely one of the very few remaining aviators that saw combat on D-Day, and certainly among the luckiest. I would never bet against this man. He would never say this himself. He credits his fellow service members, family, friends, and particularly God with the blessings and grace of his life. But his service was by any measure extraordinary and heroic. We owe him and all of his comrades, all who have served, a great debt. Captain Neal decided to stop flying after the war, and in his subsequent professional career, he worked in sales and marketing for a large international corporation. He owned and operated a large distribution firm and was the managing editor of a trade publication. He continues to be active and engaged as a sport mentor with his family and friends and with the community. And now he finds himself giving many, including all of us today, the benefit of his recollections of our shared history. He is accompanied today by some of his wonderful family, his wife Cam, who enables these wonderful recollections. Cam, thank you. His daughter Leslie Meehan, whom I used to work with and to whom I owe first meeting Jerry. Leslie's amazing children, Sean, Ethan, and Ewan. And did I mention that Jerry and Cam drove themselves here from Nashville? I am very grateful he is here with us, and especially to have him as a friend. So I give you World War II Army Air Corps Captain, D-Day veteran, 35 combat mission bomber pilot, Distinguished Flying Cross recipient, and above all, patriot. Please join me in a warm welcome to the Honorable Captain Jerome B. Neal.
Is this not a great day the Lord has made? On the morning about 2 a.m., June the 6th, 1944, as was usual, the orderly came in our Nissan hut where we were sleeping and said, "Get up, time for the mission." So we all got up, get our uniforms on, went out, went to breakfast, ended up in the briefing room where all the crews that were flying that day were gathered to find out, as usual, what the mission was that we were going to fly. The commanding officer of our group, the full colonel, he opened up the door and his staff came down the center aisleway toward the stage in the front. And as he walked down, we all stood at attention. And we called this man the old man because he was 25 years old. We had a lot of young people that were serving our country during that time. Awesome responsibilities. Well, as he got up on the stage, excuse me for my hoarseness, as he got up on the stage and they pulled back the large drape over the map of Europe, we saw there right in front of me, Operation Overlord. First, we knew that we were going to be involved in it. And I was going to be involved in the largest invasion in mankind's history. But there it was, stretched out, our string going toward Cannes, France, which was our mission target for the day. Our mission target was to go to Cannes, to try to bomb out the areas because there was 9 German Panzer units that was sitting back of that base, that city, and we were to impede their progress because they were just waiting to see where the troops were going to land, where the invasion was going to happen. When we got over the target, and incidentally, and very significant for me, as we flew over the channel, I looked up to my left, and I saw these 5,000 ships. Some people said it was 7,000. I've heard as many as 9,000, but who knew? There were so many it looked like you could cross the channel and never get your feet wet. But there they were. Here I am, a young kid. I'm looking out at history. And I see these ships all going toward the coastline of France. An awesome sight. Well, I had to be a little bit careful about looking because I was flying tight formation, so I was back and forth looking. But I saw it. A grandstand seat for this huge invasion. As we got over Cannes, as you may remember from history, the whole operation had been delayed one day because of terrible weather. So they delayed it one day and we still had bad weather. So when we got over Cannes, I had a solid undercast, so we could not bomb because we couldn't see where our target was. So we circled the target, circled and circled, waiting for hopefully a break, like we're hoping for breaks today. Never happened. So the commanding officer said, "Okay, boys, we got to go back to base and refuel and come back." So we started back over the English Channel, and my flight engineer was tapping me on the shoulder and saying, "We're running very, very low on fuel." So I prepared the crew for a bailout. As we got over the channel and I knew we was about to run out of fuel, I rang the bell and they jumped over the English Channel, over water. And almost at that time, all 4 engines, these are 4 1,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney engines, horribly noisy. All of a sudden, they all quit, and it comes deadly silence. And I had to push the plane nose down for a steep dive to keep it aflight. As we started down faster and faster, faster and faster, I looked back over my shoulder to see if the boys had gotten out, and there they are, my bombs are still on board. Forgot all about them. I pulled that salvo lever down by the base of the control panel. It pulled the pins on the bomb bay doors. It pulled the pins on all the bombs, and they all dropped out. And just dropped out just so low over the English Channel that they didn't arm, so they just fell into the water and didn't explode, fortunately. As I flared out, getting ready to land on the water, knowing that with no way I could get out of that B-24 because it would sink immediately, right in front of me, right there in front of me was this huge rock bar. Had nothing to do with it, just like God had it set it there for me for a landing place. Well, didn't think about it at the time. All I thought about was pulling that flight out from this airplane out from this steep dive and leveling out, and just as I leveled out, I hit the rock. And we started flying across the rock fast, very fast. And remember the bomb bay doors on this huge B-24 open, so it was like a giant scoop shovel picking up all that rock. And the rear of that B-24 broke off. And as I kept sliding down that rock, I saw all 4 engines pop out. The whole fuselage ground off up to the cockpit floor, and the greenhouse, or the area in front that was called the nose, where the navigators and bombardiers at, all was ground off. And we finally came to a halt. Nothing left except the cockpit and the wing. The other pilot and the navigator who said, I'm not going to jump, he rode down with us, so we kicked the windshield out, and we crawled out on the wing and sat there, sun shining. Sat there and looked at ourselves, and I thought I was sitting there, why did I survive this? Well, I found out later that most of my crew who had jumped over the channel did not know how to get out of parachutes over the water. A lot of them drowned. They should have survived. I should not have. So it's a defining moment in time. So we think a lot about survival of tens and tens of thousands of young people who gave up their life, the prime of their life, to protect us and give us this freedom that we have today, that we can sit here and honor each other and our veterans. So we must think about the perilous times that, in my way of thinking, I was raised in perilous times during the Depression years. The group of young people that went to World War II were all been hardened by the Depression years. My hope is that the young people coming up now, but we are in perilous times, will be able to rise up and have the courage, the fortitude, and the training, and the desire to continue to protect our wonderful nation. May God bless us. Freedom is not free. Thank you.
I don't know how I can follow that act. Thank you, Captain Neal. Those were very stirring words. We'd like to continue the ceremony now with tree dedications. And the first tree, appropriately, is dedicated to Captain Jerry Neal. Now, you know him from his own words, and I will read you what I have written about him. Maybe not quite in sync, but hopefully words worth repeating. Captain Neal is a decorated World War II veteran who was an aircraft commander in a B-24 and a B-17, the two strategic bombers of World War II in England, stationed in England, and he flew deadly missions over the European continent. As you heard, only on his third mission, he ended up without a landing, so to speak. Or rather, he walked away from the landing, but the plane never taxied in, that's for sure. I guess the astounding thing for me, having gone through a combat tour myself, after his rescue, he was returned to England, returned to duty, and got to do the same thing 32 more times. Now that takes some courage, folks. He stayed in the reserves after the war and completed 20 years of service. He's been awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross and the Air Medal with 5 oak leaf clusters. A memorial tree has been given by Dr. John Dreisner and his wife, Dr. Jana Dreisner, in honor of Captain Neal. The tree is a cardinal crabapple. Captain Neal, Dr. Dreisner has described you as a giant among men. And this coming from pretty much a giant himself. So I can add nothing to your resume or the description of awe and appreciation that we have for you in dedicating this tree. The next presenter is a person you all know and love and come to look with expectation on his presentations. Major Lee Saunders. He's one of the longest serving members of the Veterans Memorial Park Foundation. Been involved with the park's development since 2004 and is a Marine retired major. He earned a master's degree in management while on active duty and is an active member of and leader in the local Kiwanis Club of Abingdon, the Sons of the American Revolution, and American Mensa. He's additionally served 10 years as an instructor at the College of Older Adults, which we all appreciate here at the higher educations. Without further ado, Major Lee Saunders.
I think I'll bring this down to normal. Yeah. Let's see here. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. Our next tree dedication is presented in memory of Wilfred Ware Corbin, a World War II and Korean War veteran, sponsored by two of his friends, George Dickert and George Kilgore. There is an interesting backstory to Mr. Corbin's military service. Most of us assume that wars end with the signing of the surrender documents. This is not always the case. In World War II, Germany surrendered on May 8, 1945. Japan surrendered on September 2nd of the same year. Yet the state of war was not removed from these belligerents until well on December 31st, 1946. This was done to legally authorize American occupation troops in both Germany and Japan
Any American who entered the armed forces between December 7, 1941, the date of Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, and December 31st, 1946, the proclamation date, is classified as a World War II veteran. This would include Will Corbin, who had just graduated from high school in 1945 in the Appalachian region of western North Carolina. He entered the Navy at age 17 as a seaman recruit 2 weeks after Japan's surrender. He served aboard the USS William Mitchell, a troop ship that sailed from West Coast ports and shuttled American soldiers and supplies to and from Japan, Guam, and Hawaii, and China. The military occupation of Japan would last until 1952. This was done to assist with the reconstruction of a nation devastated by the war, to include the rebuilding of Japan's industries and transportation networks. Will Corbin was released from his 3-year contract in 1948 at the age of 21 as a petty officer 3rd class. He entered Western Carolina Teachers College on the GI Bill. He did not graduate on time. Instead, he was recalled to active duty in August of 1950 at the start of the Korean War. He was assigned to the USS Missouri, the same battleship that saw the surrender of Japan in Tokyo Harbor 5 years earlier. The USS Missouri was the first battleship to arrive in Korean waters. After his release from active duty in April of 1951, Will Corbin returned to school and graduated with a teaching degree. His first assignment was teaching 6th grade in Macon County, North Carolina. Teaching was his chosen career, one that would expand to other challenges. He would earn his master's degree in education in 1958. Will Corbin was a teacher at heart. He taught at a number of schools and locales as diverse as the mountains of western North Carolina and the Alaskan coast on the Bering Strait. He frequently served as a principal as well as a teacher, instructing his students in general science and language arts. Will authored 2 books. One was about growing up in Appalachia, entitled The Boys of Battle Branch. The other, which I hold in my hand, is A World Apart, a book about his experiences living among the Eskimos in Alaska. Will had several avocations in addition to teaching. He raised Christmas trees as a commercial enterprise. He, along with his friends George Dicker and George Kilgore, belonged to the American Chestnut Foundation to grow blight-resistant trees. And he was also a member of the Mount Rogers Appalachian Trail Club, where the 3 worked on clearing fallen trees and brush along the pathways. Will Corbin was a man for all seasons, successful and talented in so many ways. Our thanks go to tree sponsors George Dicker and George Kilgore for their generous gift to this park of an October Glory red maple to commemorate Will Corbin's life. I also have the pleasure of introducing family members Carol and Lori Corbin, Will's son and wife, and Paula and Rob Kahn, Will's daughter and her husband. And if you would, please stand. On behalf of families and friends, please join me this Veterans Day in honoring the memory of Will Corbin for his service to our country as a Navy veteran of World War II and the Korean War. Our next tree recipient is George Kilgore, a coal miner's son from Derby Holler in Wise County. George was one of 11 children, 5 older and 5 younger. He fit right in the middle. George dropped out of high school in his senior year to support his family. He enlisted in the Air Force in February 1949 on a 3-year contract. George made an allotment out to his mother for $50 for every $68 monthly paycheck he received. George was trained as a ground radio operator. As such, he was responsible for providing reliable communications critical to mission success. The highlight of his Air Force service involved communicating local weather conditions from Cape Harrison, Labrador, to two Republic F-84 Thunderjets attempting a non-stop flight from Europe to an Air Force base in Maine in 1951. These single-seat turbojet fighter bombers refueled from aerial tankers in mid-flight at 3 locations over the Atlantic. This was a high-risk operation 71 years ago. It was the first attempt by any aircraft to refuel over the open ocean. One of the Thunderjets went down into the Atlantic when a boom from the aerial tanker could not connect to the jet's refueling intake. The refueling intake had jammed. Fortunately, an air-sea rescue team from Goose Bay, Labrador, was able to pick up the downed pilot. The remaining Thunderjet made it safely to Presque Isle Air Force Base, then a major departure point for U.S. fighter planes during World War II and the Korean War due to its relative proximity to Europe. At the completion of his Air Force enlistment term, extended 1 additional year at the onset of the Korean War, George used his GI Bill to enter Lincoln Memorial University in Harrogate, Tennessee. He later transferred to the University of Tennessee in Knoxville to study electrical engineering. George met Betty, a Korean War widow, whom he met in Big Stone Gap. Betty went to Norfolk, Virginia for a job opportunity. George followed and they married in 1960. They remained in Norfolk for 38 years. During that time, George was employed by General Electric, located in nearby Portsmouth. He retired in 1991. He and Betty moved to Abingdon in 1997 to be closer to family members. George joined the American Chestnut Foundation along with his friends George Dicker and Will Corbin. This foundation conducts research to develop blight-resistant trees that once dominated American forests. Additionally, George was also one of the Appalachian Trail maintainers along with George Dicker and Will Corbin. These 3 were responsible for leveling slopes and clearing overgrowth and down trees from the trail. Today, George Kilgore and George Dicker are golf partners. They play 9 holes once a week and they do not cheat. They don't have to. They play captain's balls. They have a 3rd member, a 76-year-old ringer who can usually get the ball on the green. They are very liberal with mulligans, and they don't keep score. Please join me in thanking George Dicker, George Kilgore's golf partner and sponsor, for his generous gift of a disease-resistant American chestnut tree. The tree will be planted this spring as soon as one becomes available. May I present George Kilgore along with George Dicker. If you would, gentlemen, please stand.
Normal. Jeez. Amazing Grace will now be played by Muster Grounds music maestro Michael Henningsen, U.S. Navy vet, and Brian Reed, U.S. Navy, after which we will observe a moment of silence and a gun salute in remembrance of the fallen war heroes. Michael. Taps will now be played in memory of Marine Chief Warrant Officer retired Sean Frankie, who passed away on October 28, 2022, after 25 years of service and 5 deployments to Afghanistan. Retire the colors.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. And it was so good, let us do it again. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from...
In light of the weather we find ourselves with, I thought it would be best to have everybody stay comfortably where you are. We will do a symbolic unveiling, and then for those that can, we'll walk to the statue and actually take off the tarp. But I want people to be comfortable and out of the weather. So I want to say thank you again for staying with us as we prepare to unveil the monument and the special addition to this really wonderful park. I'm grateful you're here. This monument and this moment was long in coming in several ways. It is the work of many hands, both literally and figuratively. It would have not have happened without the inspiration, the work, and the support of many. This monument is all about gratitude. So please allow me, and on behalf of my wonderful wife, Dr. Janet Dreisner, child psychiatrist who served this area for many years, many hundreds, really thousands of children in the region, my partner in all of this, to take a few minutes to express our gratitude to all those who were a part of making this possible through their inspiration, their work, and support. First, the inspiration. It's embodied by a couple, dear friends, second parents really to Jana, now deceased, named Flea and Morris Chandler, both World War II veterans. Over the hill is a Norwegian spruce dedicated to Morris. But Flea also served active duty as a dental hygienist, a fact that we did not learn until both she and Morris had died. Morris was in the 99th Infantry Division at Elsenborn Ridge in the Battle of the Bulge. That battle, also known as the Ardennes Offensive, began on December 16, 1944, and was the largest and bloodiest single battle fought by the United States in World War II, and the third deadliest campaign in U.S. history, behind the Battle of Normandy, or D-Day, that we heard about today. The 10-day Battle of Elsenborn Ridge, not nearly as well known as Bastogne, where the media was, but that 10-day battle where Maurice fought was part of the Battle of the Bulge and stopped the German advance. Elsenborn Ridge is considered the single deadliest battle fought in U.S. military history, with more than 5,000 killed, deadlier even than the first day of Operation Overlord, or D-Day, and the Civil War Battle of Gettysburg, for comparison. The idea for this monument began as a story. Morris told Gianna and I about his first few days in the front lines. He was a replacement for replacements. A few weeks before the Battle of the Bulge began, he arrived as part of the 99th Infantry. He was a new replacement and walking on the snowy ground with 4 other men. They heard a loud whistling in the air. Just then, the trees above exploded with wood and shrapnel, and he was immediately pushed to the ground by one of his comrades. When the shelling stopped, one of the men he was walking with was dead. Morris, the new arrival, watched in disbelief as one of his remaining combat veteran companions removed the boots of the dead man and put them on his own feet. The experienced soldier looked at Morris and said, "We're the same size, he and I, and his boots are better than mine." Weeks later, suffering from the cold and with frozen feet, an injury he would contend with for the rest of his life, Morris told us he then understood just how valuable those boots were. Long before boots on the ground became a metaphor for actual commitment of service members to battle or an answer to another dangerous call, boots have been essential equipment to all those who have borne the battle. The boots bear them away from home into and out of danger as they willingly face the dangers on our behalf, and in fidelity with their comrades in arms. Boots provide protection, comfort, and mobility. Often, the performance capabilities that they provide are understandably not much noticed by the wearer. Yet on many battlefields of our history, a decent pair of boots might be the difference between success or failure in action, between the ability to carry on or not, and sometimes between lifelong complications of trench foot or frostbite, and even the very life of the service member. Like the proverbial nail in the centuries-old proverb, "For want of a nail," the boot may seem inconsequential, yet it proves vital. As you know, a vital piece of equipment is often called kit, and a combat boot is common kit to virtually all service members throughout our history. If not in combat, or if not in constant use, as is often the case, these combat boots are usually routinely used during at least some part of training or service. A single boot is a reminder, a symbol of both service and sacrifice, of both hope and loss. We don't know if the boot is now alone, without a companion, or merely waiting to be joined by a companion to continue to serve and protect a service member. We know the boot has had a companion, and just as service members are called to team up, to rely on, to buddy up, to care for, and to work with one another to effectively advance a mission, the boot cannot, without its companion, effectively meet its mission. We know too that these boots, like the people that don them, wear out, go missing, or become no more. Like service members who return home without their comrades or loved ones who have lost their beloved, all who yet live will go on for a time before we too leave. Now to the work. Jan and I have long been acquainted with this special park, a memorial to veterans. We approached the chair, Emmett Urey, and the foundation board with the idea for this memorial. This is in keeping with the contemplated theme of this large and very living Veterans Memorial Park in this historic town of Abingdon, Virginia, in Washington County, named for General George Washington, not President George Washington, which has given aid and comfort and final rest to veterans right here where we are since the very beginning of these United States of America. The 13-acre park is a beautiful tribute rooted in both citizens' hopes for a safe return of our service members, as well as a fitting gratitude for their service. The park is enjoyed by people of all ages and all walks of life, with facilities, I think, geared particularly at children. It was a fitting thing to commission this sculpture in this beautiful place, but this work of many hands could not have occurred without support from so many, so please allow me to thank a few of them. With gratitude to the town of Abingdon in Washington County, represented behind me for the wisdom to create and support this wonderful park. Gratitude to Emmett Urey, the founder of this park and the chair of the Veterans Memorial Foundation, who has worked hand in hand with Jan and I since we first approached him about 2 years ago. To his assistant and foundation secretary, Veterans Foundation Secretary Dixie McVeigh Jolly, who has faithfully and patiently facilitated this work every step of the way. To Dwayne Ball and his colleagues at the Boulder Look Stone Company, who generously found and provided the really wonderful boulder, part of this ground that now serves as the base of the statue, and who artistically installed it. Sculptor Matt Glenn and Big Statues of Provo, Utah, who put artistic form to the vision of the boot. Gratitude to Matt Henderson, Abingdon Town Engineer, who graciously helped with the receiving of the statue, its installation, and the beautification of the site. To Robert Lee Saunders, Foundation Board Member, who handles all the many details and logistics and beautifully provided dedications each year at these events, and Linda Wise, who generously helps Lee with all of the graphical materials in your hands, so beautifully done. To KC St. Louis and the Abingdon Olive Oil Company, who has been gracious and neighborly as we did this installation. Gratitude to Colonel John Bradley, our MC, and the rest of our Veterans Foundation Board, all of whom supported the vision and helped in determining the placement. Jack McGrady, Vice Chairman, Stephen DeBoer, Treasurer, Scott Sexton, Assistant Treasurer, Michael Henningsen, Chaplain, Al Brady, John Bradley, who I mentioned, Martha Keys, Susan Lowry, here today pinning on ribbons, Rick Morgan, T. Wayne Timberlake, Kevin Wilson, and two who are both members of the Washington County Board of Supervisors and members of the Veterans Foundation Board, Mike Rush and Charlie Hargis. Gratitude to Jerry and Cam Neal for gracing us with the presence of a living embodiment of the greatest generation. Cam, I know how important your support is and encouragement are to making these events possible. To Jerry, thank you for the effort of being here. And thank you to your daughter Leslie Thompson-Meehan, who introduced us, as I mentioned before, and also for coming to Nashville to bring her children here. Her kids were playing, actually I can see Ethan and Ewan playing on the teeter-totter even as I speak, which is absolutely wonderful. If I may now express some gratitude in a point of personal privilege, Jan and I would like to acknowledge and express our gratitude to our parents. Our mothers, Eloise Van Vossen and Faith Dreisner, seated in front of me, who supported our veteran fathers, Dr. Donald Van Vossen and John E. Dreisner. Our veteran fathers are here with us today, one in person, one in heaven, all in spirit. They're all in our hearts. Without them, obviously, without our parents, we would not be standing here today. Less obvious is the inspiration and support they gave us during our own journey in the Air Force, Jana's and mine. My father's experience in the Marines absolutely inspired me to join the military. Jana's parents' military service, also in the Air Force, made my obligations to the Air Force when I proposed to her not a deal breaker. And to our children, son John D. Dreisner and his wife Jen Dreisner, who are citizens of this wonderful town of Abingdon, and son Jason Dreisner, who grew up here, and wife Angela Dreisner, and their respective children, one each, as we say in the military, John Oliver Wolf Dreisner and Aiden Christopher Dreisner. Thank you. You are our delights, and we love you more than you know. And finally, gratitude to each of you. By being here today, you demonstrate clearly through your presence and your appreciation and your support, your gratitude for all who have served our nation. Thus, this memorial is about gratitude. Gratitude for the sacrifice of service members and their families and the loved ones that bring us all peace, freedom, and liberty. Gratitude for the simple joys of walking in a park, watching children play, picnicking with friends and family, a not infrequent hopeful image in the mind of service members when they're deployed far away from home. Gratitude that a service member has for the love and recognition expressed by others for the member's service and sacrifice. Gratitude to God for a beautiful place to put a piece of art created by the joyful hands of His creation. Gratitude of a service member for good and serviceable kit, a simple boot, humble but absolutely vital, that allows them to do their duty. Gratitude for the designer, the maker, the procurer, the deliverer of the boot, and what their collective work, however humble, really meant to the receiving service member and to those served. Gratitude for the many lives that this humble boot has saved, made better, both of its owner and of those known and unknown to the boot's owner that have benefited from the owner's service and sacrifice. Gratitude for the knowledge that while this is a single boot, we know it was not alone, ever, as it served its vital purpose, just as we are not alone in serving ours. In closing, I wrote a verse about this memorial, and perhaps it captures better some of what I've tried to convey in my words today. I will close by reading it, and as I read it, I'm going to ask, I had planned to have us down at the far end of the park, and I had planned to ask them to stand and go to the base of the statue and pull away the veil. These are our honorary unveilers. But I'm going to now call upon them and ask them to stand for a moment. That is my wife Jana, Jerry, Neil, Cam Neil, my mom, Faith Dreisner, and my father, John Dreisner. If you would stand to do us the honors, symbolically, of unveiling this memorial as you represent people we are grateful for. And feel free to be seated when I finish the poem, and then those who can walk down to the base of the statue. The poem is titled Gratitude, on seeing a lone combat boot. Gratitude for those that bore the battle. They who with raised hand said, "I'll go," and never returned. Yet dreamt of a day in a place like this, where children ran and parents laughed and lovers walked hand in hand in the grass, among the trees and the stones and the silent statues. Gratitude for those who did return, partaking once again of the grace of those dreamt of simple pleasures, whole, broken, with joy and with sorrow. Gratitude for those restless in the dark hours that prayed, worried, wept, mourned, who too served and sacrificed. Gratitude for those that supported, honored, celebrated, that heartened another with aid and comfort, or welcomed them on any return, whole, broken, no more. Gratitude for the designers, the suppliers, the gatherers, the makers, the shippers, the deliverers, the providers of the boot. Basic essential kit, common to all who ever wore our country's uniform. Mere article in ease, well-worn friend in training, protector in strife, seeming simple, yet not at all so. Like its owner, the boot was not alone, yet resting without a companion. Who can tell if company is near, far, or no more? Gratitude thus for all that sacrificed throughout the ages in memory and in deep time, for freedom, for each of us, for humanity, to have joy, to give joy, to bring joy to our Creator here and out among the stars. Like each of us, this boot is never alone. Thank you for being here. Grateful for you being here. For those that can, we'll walk down as Aiden Christopher Dreisner approaches Papa, which is absolutely wonderful. We'll walk down and we'll unveil the booth. Thank you very much.
This concludes the ceremony, and have a safe and wonderful holiday weekend. Thank you.